The morning over Silver Creek Ranch arrived slow and dusty, sunlight stretching across endless fences, while a dry wind whispered through tired grass. Nothing ever changed here, until that day. Ethan Cole stood near the wooden corral, one hand resting on the weathered rail, the other loosely holding a coil of rope. At 35, he was a man carved by solitude. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a strong, angular jaw shadowed by short, dark stubble, and deep-set gray eyes that rarely revealed more than necessary. His dark brown hair was kept short but unruly, often pushed back absent-mindedly. Years ago, a brutal winter had taken both his parents within weeks, leaving him alone with the ranch and a silence that never quite left his bones. Since then, Ethan had become a man of few words, steady and dependable, but distant, like a mountain that offered shelter yet kept its heart buried deep. The horses shifted quietly behind him, their breath rising in soft clouds. He understood them better than people. Animals didn't lie. That was why he noticed her immediately. Lily Carter stood at the far edge of the gate, as if unsure whether she had the right to step any closer. She looked no older than 25, slender to the point of fragility, her posture slightly hunched as though trying to take up less space in the world. Her long blonde hair was loosely tied, strands falling around a pale face marked by exhaustion. Her green eyes held something deeper than fear, something worn, like hope stretched too thin, and there, on her cheek, was the bruise, dark, unmistakable, the shape of fingers. Ethan's grip on the rope tightened just slightly. Lily lowered her gaze when she saw him looking. I heard you might need help, she said softly, her voice uneven but controlled, like someone used to swallowing pain before it could be heard. I can teach, clean, cook, anything. I just need work. She didn't explain the bruise. She didn't have to. Ethan studied her in silence. He had seen storms roll across these plains, had watched fences snap and trees fall, but there was something quieter here, something more dangerous, a kind of damage that didn't make noise. You ever worked on a ranch? He asked, his voice low, calm. She shook her head. No, sir, but I learned fast. There was a pause. The wind moved between them, carrying dust and unspoken truths. Ethan nodded once. You can stay. Relief flickered across her face so quickly it almost hurt to see. He turned away first, as if the decision cost him nothing. But deep inside, something shifted, something old and buried stirring awake like a beast that had been sleeping too long. Because Ethan Cole knew one thing with absolute certainty. That bruise did not belong to her, and whoever had put it there had just stepped onto his land without knowing it. By late afternoon, the wind at Silver Creek had softened, carrying the scent of hay and distant rain, as if the land itself was holding its breath for something yet to be spoken. Lily Carter moved carefully through the small ranch house, her steps quiet, almost apologetic, as though she feared the floorboards might reject her presence. She had changed into a simple cotton dress Ethan had found in storage, slightly too large, but clean. The bruise on her cheek had darkened at the edges, fading into 6 shades of yellow and purple, like a memory refusing to let go. Still, she worked. She swept, cooked, and when morning came, she sat at the wooden table with 2 children who arrived just after sunrise. Tommy Reed, age 9, was all elbows and restless energy, with sandy hair that never stayed flat and bright brown eyes that held more curiosity than patience. His younger sister, Ellie Reed, 7, was the opposite, small, quiet, with soft chestnut curls framing a pale, thoughtful face. Their mother worked long hours in a nearby town, and for years Ethan had allowed them to come here, where it was safe, where the land stretched wide enough for children to breathe. Lily taught them gently, her voice soft but steady, guiding Ellie's careful letters and correcting Tommy's wandering numbers with patient smiles. Watching her, Ethan felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not comfort, not yet, but something close to it. He stood in the doorway longer than necessary, arms crossed, leaning slightly against the frame. He told himself he was checking on the children, but his eyes always returned to her. She noticed, and every time she did, her shoulders stiffened just slightly. Fear, he realized, did not leave all at once. It lingered, like cold in the bones. That afternoon, the children ran outside, their laughter trailing behind them like echoes of something simpler. The house grew quiet again. Lily remained at the table, her fingers lightly gripping the edge as if grounding herself. Ethan stepped inside. He didn't rush. He never did. "You missed a spot by the stove," he said, his voice even, almost casual. Lily nodded quickly. "I'll fix it." He watched her stand, watched the way she avoided turning her face fully toward him. That was when he saw it again, the shape of the bruise, clearer now in the afternoon light. Not an accident, not even close. Ethan exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening just enough to be felt, not seen. "Who did that to you?" The question landed softly, but it didn't ask for permission. Lily froze. For a moment it seemed like she might lie. He could almost see it forming, the safe answer, the practiced deflection. Her lips parted, her eyes flickered toward the door, toward escape, but there was nowhere to go. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. It was nothing. Ethan took one step forward, the floor creaked under his weight, firm, final. "That," he said quietly, "is not from nothing." Silence stretched between them, heavy as storm clouds. Lily's hands trembled. She lowered her head, her fingers curling into the fabric of her dress as though bracing for something worse than truth. "It was Ryan Thorne," she said at last, the name breaking out of her like something sharp and painful. He wouldn't accept that I ended things." Ethan didn't move, but something inside him did. "Ryan Thorne," he repeated, slower, as if testing the weight of the name. Lily nodded, her breathing uneven now. "He has connections. People listen to him. If I said anything..." She swallowed hard. "No one would believe me." Ethan's gaze shifted slightly, not away, but deeper, as though he were already seeing beyond the walls of the house, beyond the fences, to wherever this man stood. He had seen men like that before. Men who believed the world bent for them. Men who had never been told no in a language they understood. His hands flexed once at his sides, then stilled. "I see," he said. Nothing more. No raised voice, no immediate promise, no visible anger. But the air changed. It thickened, like the moment before lightning splits the sky. Lily dared to look up, confusion flickering through her fear. She had expected something louder. Anger, questions, maybe even doubt. But what she found instead unsettled her more. Ethan was calm. Too calm. Like a man who had already made a decision and simply hadn't spoken it yet. Outside, the wind picked up again, brushing against the windows like a warning. And somewhere deep within Ethan Cole, something old and unyielding had awakened fully now. Ryan Thorne did not know it yet, but he had just become a problem that belonged to this land. Morning settled gently over Silver Creek, the wind calmer now, as if the land itself had chosen to stand watch rather than whisper. Nothing was said aloud, yet everything had already begun to change. Ethan Cole moved through the ranch with the same steady rhythm as always, but beneath that calm surface, his decision spread quietly like roots beneath the soil. By sunrise, the outer gates had been reinforced, chains replaced, hinges oiled so they would not fail under pressure. By mid-morning, 2 men rode the perimeter, men Ethan trusted not because they spoke well, but because they endured without breaking. Marcus Hale was the first, a man in his early 40s with a thick, sun-worn face and a heavy beard threaded with gray. His broad frame carried the weight of years spent working hard land, and a scar cut faintly across his left cheek, earned long ago when he stood between a drunk ranch hand and a frightened stable boy. Marcus was not quick to smile, but when he did, it meant something had truly earned it. Beside him rode Jonah Briggs, younger by nearly 10 years, lean and sharp-eyed, with sandy hair and a restless edge to his movements. Jonah had once chased trouble for the thrill of it until a near-fatal accident with a wild stallion left him with a permanent stiffness in his shoulder and a quieter understanding of consequence. They did not ask questions when Ethan gave orders. They simply nodded and rode. Lily noticed everything. At first, she tried not to. She moved through her tasks, teaching Tommy and Ellie, preparing meals, sweeping floors, but the subtle shifts pressed in around her. The gates closed tighter. Footsteps lingered where before there had been none, and every time she stepped outside, someone was always within sight, even if they pretended not to be. Fear did not vanish overnight, but it changed. It softened at the edges, like ice beginning to melt under a patient sun. That evening, as the sky turned a slow amber, Lily stood near the kitchen window, her fingers resting lightly against the wooden frame. She watched Marcus and Jonah ride past the barn, their silhouettes steady against the fading light. For the first time in weeks, her breath came easier. Behind her, a soft sound, boots against floorboards. Ethan. He didn't speak immediately. He rarely did. Instead, he crossed the room and checked the stack of firewood near the stove, adjusting a log that didn't need adjusting. His presence filled the space in a way that was not overwhelming, but grounding, like something solid enough to lean against without fear of falling through. "You don't have to keep watch," Lily said quietly, not turning around. "I'm not," Ethan replied. A small lie. Not spoken to deceive, but to protect. Lily turned then, studying him. The fading bruise on her cheek caught the last of the sunlight, softer now, less violent, but not gone. "You changed things," she said. Ethan shrugged slightly. "Needed doing." That was all. No mention of Ryan, no mention of danger, no promises spoken out loud. But Lily understood. She had lived long enough in fear to recognize what safety looked like, not in words, but in actions that never asked for credit. Later that night, sleep came differently. Not the restless kind that hovered at the edge of nightmares, but something deeper, steadier. Lily lay in the small room Ethan had given her, the window cracked just enough to let in the cool night air. For the first time in a long while, her body did not brace against shadows. Outside, somewhere in the distance, a horse shifted in its stall. And closer still, boots moved across the porch. Ethan did not sleep much that night. He sat in the wooden chair just beyond the door, hat resting low in his hands, eyes fixed on the dark horizon stretching beyond the fences. To anyone else, it might have seemed unnecessary, but Ethan Cole did not believe in unnecessary things, not when it came to protecting what had been placed under his roof. Inside the house, Lily slept, truly slept, and though neither of them would have named it yet, something fragile had begun to grow between them. Not loud, not urgent, but steady as roots finding water beneath dry ground. It was not love, not yet, but it was the beginning of something neither of them would be able to walk away from. The afternoon broke with the sudden thunder of hooves, sharp and violent against the stillness, like a storm that had found its way across miles just to reach this one place. Lily Carter froze in the middle of the yard, a basket of laundry clutched loosely in her hands. The sound alone was enough. Her body remembered before her mind could catch up. Fear did not ask permission. It returned like an old wound reopening. Marcus and Jonah were already moving, their horses turning in practiced arcs as they rode toward the front gate. Dust rose behind them in thick clouds, catching the sunlight in a way that made everything feel unreal, like a scene seen through trembling glass. The rider came into view. Gavin Pike sat slouched in the saddle, a man in his mid-30s with a narrow, fox-like face and thin lips that curled too easily into something mocking. His dark hair hung greasy against his temples, and his eyes, small, sharp, constantly shifting, never rested in one place for long. He wore a weathered coat that might once have been fine, now stained and neglected, much like the man himself. Years of doing other men's dirty work had carved something hollow into him. He was not brave, but he was dangerous in the way cornered animals often are. "I'm here for the girl," Gavin called out, his voice loud but lacking true authority. "Mr. Thorne wants her back." Lily's breath caught, not Ryan himself, but close enough. From the porch, Ethan Cole stepped forward. He did not hurry. He did not raise his voice, but the shift in him was immediate, like the ground itself deciding to hold firm. He walked down the steps, boots hitting wood with quiet certainty, until he stood between Lily and the gate. The distance wasn't large, but it was absolute. "She stays," Ethan said. Simple, final. Gavin smirked, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "That ain't your decision to make." Ethan's gaze did not waver. "It is on my land." The words settled heavy, like stones dropped into still water. Marcus shifted slightly in his saddle, one hand resting near the rifle slung across his back. Not threatening, not yet, but ready. Jonah mirrored him on the other side, his sharp eyes never leaving Gavin's hands. For a moment, the world narrowed to that single stretch of dirt between them. Then Gavin spat to the side, muttering something under his breath, and pulled his reins. "This ain't over," he said, turning his horse. "You'll see." He rode off in a cloud of dust faster than he had arrived. Silence followed, but it was not peace. That night came heavy. The sky stretched dark and endless above Silver Creek, stars scattered like distant witnesses. Inside the house, everything appeared calm, too calm. Lily tried to believe it would hold. She checked the doors twice, then a third time. Sleep came slowly, uncertain, until it broke. A crash against the front door shattered the silence, wood rattling under the force of something violent and unrestrained. Lily bolted upright, her heart slamming against her ribs. A voice followed, drunken, furious. "I know you're in there, Lily." Ryan Thorne. Lily's blood ran cold. She stumbled toward the hallway, gripping the wall for balance, every step pulling her closer to a past she had tried to outrun. But she didn't reach the door first. Ethan did. He opened it before the next blow could land. Ryan stood there, disheveled and wild, his once polished appearance reduced to something raw and ugly. He was tall, well-built, but it was his eyes that betrayed him. Dark, burning, unhinged. Power had always shielded him from consequence, and now, stripped of control, he looked like a man who did not understand how to exist without ownership. "She belongs to me," Ryan slurred, pushing forward. Ethan didn't move, didn't step back. "You're done here," Ethan said, his voice low, steady. Ryan laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "You think you can hide her?" Before he could take another step, Marcus and Jonah were there, gripping his arms, forcing him back. Ryan struggled, shouting, cursing, but the strength behind him was unyielding. Ethan stepped closer then, just enough. "She was never yours," he said, "and she never will be." The words landed harder than any fist. Ryan faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. They dragged him away from the porch, his voice fading into the night, swallowed by distance and consequence. The door closed. Silence returned, but different this time. Lily's legs gave out before she could stop them. Ethan caught her. She didn't resist. Her hands clutched at his shirt, her face pressed against his chest as the tremors finally broke free. But the tears that came were not the same as before. They weren't born from fear. They came from release, from survival. Ethan held her there, steady, unmoving, like the land itself refusing to let her fall. "You're safe," he said quietly, and this time, she believed him. Autumn came quietly to Silver Creek, brushing the fields in gold and amber, as if the land itself had decided to soften after everything it had witnessed. The air turned crisp, the wind no longer sharp but gentle, carrying the scent of dry leaves and distant wood smoke. Time did not rush here. It settled, it healed. Lily Carter stood by the fence one morning, her fingers resting lightly on the worn wood, watching the horses move across the pasture. The bruise on her cheek was gone now, erased from her skin as though it had never been there, but not from memory. Still, the way she stood had changed. Her shoulders no longer curved inward. Her breathing came steady, no longer caught between fear and silence. Behind her, a low bark broke the quiet. Scout, a 3-year-old border collie with a sleek black and white coat and sharp, intelligent eyes, trotted toward her, tail swaying in easy rhythm. He had once belonged to Ethan's father, trained to herd cattle with precision and loyalty that bordered on instinct. After the old man's passing, Scout had become quieter, as though grief had found even him. But lately he had begun to return to himself, just like the ranch, just like Lily. She crouched slightly, letting her hand rest against the dog's head. "You're watching me too, aren't you?" she murmured. Scout didn't answer, of course, but he didn't leave either. From across the yard, Ethan Cole approached, carrying a small wooden box in his hands. He walked slower than usual, not from hesitation, but from something heavier, something unfamiliar pressing against his usually certain steps. His broad frame still held that quiet strength, his sharp features unchanged, but there was a tension in him now, subtle yet undeniable. For a man who had faced storms without flinching, this was something else entirely. He stopped a few feet from her. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind moved gently between them, lifting a strand of Lily's hair, carrying it briefly into the light before letting it fall again. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Ethan said, his voice lower than usual, not as steady as before. Lily turned to face him fully. There was no fear in her eyes now, only quiet anticipation. Ethan exhaled slowly, then set the wooden box on the fence beside him. His hands lingered there for a second longer than necessary before he opened it. Inside, nestled against dark velvet, was a simple ring, not extravagant, not polished to perfection, but solid, carefully made, like everything else he built with his hands. "When you came here," he began, his gaze steady but softer than it had ever been, "you needed a place to stay. I gave you that." Lily's breath caught slightly. Ethan stepped closer. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about that. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I don't know how to say things the right way," he admitted, a faint, almost self-aware edge to his tone. Never really learned how. A small, almost invisible smile touched Lily's lips. "But I know this," he continued. "I won't let anything hurt you again. Not while I'm standing." He paused, then, more quietly, almost like a truth he hadn't meant to say out loud. "And I don't want you to leave." The words settled between them, simple, unpolished, but real. Lily felt something inside her shift, not the sharp, breaking kind she had known before, but something steady, something that rooted itself deep and refused to be shaken loose. For so long she had survived. Now she was being asked to stay, not out of fear, but out of choice. Tears filled her eyes, but they did not fall from pain. They came slowly, like rain after drought. "Yes," she said softly. Ethan didn't move for a second, as if making sure he had heard her correctly. Then, carefully, almost reverently, he took the ring and slipped it onto her finger. It fit. Of course it did. Scout barked once, sharp and bright, as if marking the moment in the only way he knew how. The wind moved through the fields again, carrying something new this time. Not tension, not warning, but warmth. Lily stepped closer, her hand resting lightly against Ethan's chest, feeling the steady beat beneath. For the first time in her life, nothing in her wanted to run. Silver Creek was no longer just a place she had found. It was a place she had chosen. And Ethan Cole, quiet, unyielding, and steady as the land itself, had kept his promise. Not by changing the world, but by becoming the place where she no longer had to fear it. Some wounds do not shout. They hide in quiet places, behind lowered eyes and practiced smiles. And sometimes healing does not arrive as a grand rescue, but as a steady presence. Someone who chooses to stay, to protect, to see what others overlook. In everyday life, we may never face a storm like Lily's, yet we all carry unseen battles. And perhaps the smallest act, listening, standing beside someone, or simply believing them, can become the turning point in another person's story. If this story touched something in your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who might need it. Leave a comment and tell us what part stayed with you the most. And if you believe in stories that remind us of quiet strength and second chances, consider subscribing to the channel so we can keep bringing these journeys to life. May God watch over you, guide your steps, and bring peace to your home and heart today and always.